Good afternoon and welcome to State of the Arts NYC. This is your host, Savannah Bailey-McClain. And we are so happy to have our guests in the studio today. We have Elinor Tatum. She is the publisher of the famed Amsterdam News. And we have with us Dedric Hammond, who is the subject of this fabulous documentary. You did this documentary about a very serious issue, gun violence, and how it has plagued our communities throughout New York City. And you took this very important subject and you weaved it into a documentary, a film, a creative medium for which to tell the story, allow us to hear the voices of all the people impacted by this subject so that we could feel more empathy, but maybe come together as communities so therefore we could try to solve this situation. So that's why I wanted both of you here, because I was very taken by that documentary. But my first question is to Elinor. What made the Amsterdam News decide to work on a documentary of this nature?
Well, it started before the documentary, and it's much bigger than just the documentary. It started with our initiative called Beyond the Barrel of the Gun, which is an initiative that is looking at gun violence and how we can help to change the paradigm, how we can help stem gun violence in Black and brown communities. And we understand that gun violence is so much more than what the quote-unquote mainstream media talks about. Mm-hmm. We understand that it's the generational trauma, it's the PTSD, it is the root causes are what's keeping gun violence happening in our communities.
Yes.
And those are those symptoms that are not being treated, that is part of the reason why gun violence is continuing in our communities. And we know that there are solutions to gun violence, and those solutions are not the ones that are being talked about.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why we created Beyond the Barrel of the Gun, so we could start talking about the solutions that work. And we can start highlighting the people that are part of the solution, like Beloved. And we look at where all the money is going.
Yes.
And we're not seeing the outcomes that we should see with the money that is being used. And we also know that if the same amount of money that was being used for other public health crises like diabetes and cancer and heart disease, if those same public dollars were being used for gun violence, which is a public health crisis.
Yes, it is.
There would also be a difference. But again, those dollars would have to be going to the right places. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we started looking at gun violence as a public health crisis, as an epidemic, and knowing that there are solutions out there that we have to solve.
Yes. And
also trying to change the paradigm of when it bleeds, it leads, being on the front pages of our newspapers.
Yes.
And, we looked at, the week, for instance, that we talked about Beloved and we talked about the documentary. That weekend, there were over a dozen shootings in New York City. And when you looked at the front cover of the newspapers across the city and you looked at the newsstands, there was, I think the New York Post or the Daily News had something like 21 shot, 14, I don't remember what the actual numbers were. And then you looked at another headline, it was something else about how many people were shot, how many people were killed. And then you saw our front page, which was Beloved, and talking about the solutions to the violence versus what the outcomes were.
Gotcha.
To the violence. And so we're talking about the solutions, and we want to change the narrative. And we want to talk about the people, the heroes of the violence, the people that are making a difference. We want to talk about those people that are changing the paradigm. We don't want to make heroes out of the people that are the perpetrators of violence.
Right.
we don't want to talk about the people that are doing the violence. We want to talk about the people who are changing the story.
With that said, I think we should show the trailer of that documentary, Beloved, for our audience. So I'm going to ask our engineers to play that for us.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? How y'all feeling? What's good, King? Everything good. How you holding up? So they know me from when I used to be called Bad News. I used to be the one selling drugs, shooting people, kidnapping people, all types of other stuff. Let's go. Oh. Now I'm known as Beloved. It didn't look like you wanted that one. When I got shot, I really didn't even know I was shot. It put 24 holes in my intestines. Shootings was like every other day. It was almost to a point where a lot of us wouldn't go to sleep if we ain't hear no gunshots. What's good, King?
We've been through so much trauma that that's just a normal way of life, that we don't feel comfortable when we're not feeling traumatized.
Me and you on the street, I got a gun on my waist. I'm like, yo, hold this for me real quick. Being shot and doing shooting helped me with the work because I experienced both. Being a credible messenger really means the community acknowledge you.
You was out there day in and day out, on the ground. I could speak for this. I saw you in action. I saw you dealing with mothers, dealing with fathers, dealing with people from the hood who came to see their boy shot, and you gave the bad news to them that their loved ones didn't survive. That was you. You was out there trying to prevent it before that person lost his life. I'm talking to you, beloved.
Yes.
All the ills that's going on inside our community that they ain't get to the hospital for yet, we dealing with that in real time, day-to-day basis. We street doctors.
And so now we have in the studio Beloved himself. I want to thank you for coming on to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And what's interesting, you are a part of this whole new sort of nationwide initiative to have credible people who have been perhaps on both sides,
Yes.
those who have participated in violence, those who now want to find redemption, which really struck me when you said that people are looking for redemption. And you're trying to help young people so that they don't engage in violence. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did this all begin for you?
So once again, my name is Beloved, and one of the things that got me to really realize how serious it was, just growing up in St. Nick, Niger, being welcomed by violence. Me and my brothers getting jumped. I had to be probably like 11. My little brother, 4 years younger than me, so he had to be like 7. And my baby brother was there, and they jumped on us. And it was because we just said a name of a hood that they wasn't all right with. So we was living on 140th, and from 140th we moved to St. Nick Projects. Okay. And what hit hard was they asked me where I was from, and I'm like, I'm from 40th. And they was like, oh, all right. They walked away. One guy come back with like 40, 50 dudes. And they like, tell them where you said you from. I'm like, I'm from 140th. And they just start jumping us, beating us up, you know, and just running with my brother, I realized the rules in my mother's house ain't the rules that's in the streets.
Okay.
Right? So dysfunctional youth, disconnected youth, we just youth. And nobody there was really trying to stop the situation. What got real for us was I became a person that I didn't want to be. I love less to be loveless. I end up realizing that most of the youth, we're going to walk each other to our last hours. So I end up picking up a gun at the age of like 12 or 13. I end up stopped going to school for a while. I started learning the street rules. And when I learned the street rules, I didn't know that I was putting myself deeper and deeper into more mental health situations, more trauma, because now that I got a gun, I got to run from police now. I got to run from the people I'm shooting at or getting shot at. So what became real for me is that I wasn't stopping bullets from coming at me and my brothers. So I felt like I'm a failure because I end up going to jail. And when I went to jail, dark became so bright and silence became so loud, and now I'm just a number. Wow. Now a lot of times you hear people use language like, you know, you want to be a real nigga, right? But in jail, you get a chance to really be that because you don't have rights. You really understand now what it is to really be that. And what hurt me was when I got the last talk from my brother, and he was like, yo, you left me out here, but ain't no protection now. The whole NYCHA St. Nick is saying this to me. Like, there's nobody out here to protect us, to make sure we make it home, to school, none of that. So what hurt me was I realized that being bad news wasn't the answer.
That was your former name.
Yes, my former name.
That's what people used to know you as.
So it was, you know, it's different from this year and this day and time than from last year, right? And I say last year, like, New Harlem is different from Old Harlem. New Harlem, you could make your name up and say that's what you are. Old Harlem, the streets gave you that name.
Really?
Yes. So also being a credible messenger, that's what makes you so real and realistic to the community, because you're not something that you're telling yourself. The community knows that you're a staple of the community, and they now calling you a credible messenger. They know you could reach people in the darkest places. They know that you could put out fires. They know that you really was so close to the problem that you was the problem to now you the solution, and now you got the answer. And we don't call ourselves experts. We call ourselves doctors of the street, because we so in tune with where the pain lies at. And a lot of time the pain don't lies only in the physical way. It's also mental. It's also emotional. And what hurts you is that when you think, when you was in the street and you're shooting at people, you would think that would stop other people from thinking about doing something to you. But now it puts you on the radar to be killed. So now people are thinking about giving me bullets for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I end up getting shot up 2:30 in the evening. I end up getting shot up again 8 o'clock in the morning, all in the same year. And what hit real and hit my mother hard was she didn't raise me like that.
Okay.
She didn't make that my lifestyle. The street gave me that. And sometimes the street could love you to death. So I had to break the love of the streets by really listening to my brother and understanding that I wasn't the answer then. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't have Christ. I didn't have God. I had everything except that. I was baptized to the drugs in the streets.
Gotcha.
You get what I'm saying?
Well, one of the things that caught my attention in the film was the fact that trauma was emphasized, that people of color, black and brown, they actually are experiencing trauma every single day. And that's one of the underpinnings of gun violence. It's trauma. It's also poverty. Poverty is, you know, really raking a coal over our community, because if you don't see the possibilities of having a quality of life, and then on top of that, you're dealing with other mental issues like anxiety or then depression, then you're right. The streets have gotten you. They've kept you, you know, at a bare minimum. You are not thriving as a human being. And so can you talk about that a little bit, about how you're trying to spotlight trauma and that we need to deal with that, because you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and people don't talk about that in our communities, and that is something we need to tackle.
Well, you know, so before you'd asked a question about how, you know, we came to doing this documentary, this is actually the first documentary that the Amsterdam News has ever done.
And I want to congratulate you on that,
Well, thank
because
you.
I felt like the Amsterdam News was starting to change when I saw you doing this initiative, when I saw you doing the film. I've known the Amsterdam News for many, many years, but I saw that as a bold move,
Yeah.
and I was very taken by that.
Well, you know, it was about time. And it was about time that we took to the streets to, so to speak, to really combat this issue, because we were sick and tired of seeing it. We didn't want to have to cover another shooting. We
Right.
didn't want to put another child on our front page.
Yes.
And, you know, when I was talking before, I was talking about that generational trauma.
Yes.
That trauma that's not treated. Left untreated, it creates more trauma. And it goes on for generation after generation after generation. And, young people, old people, everyone, no one is getting the support services that they need. It's not happening at the schools. It's not happening at home. It's not happening anywhere because our community is not used to going to professionals for mental health services.
Right. But there's a lot of shame, too, when it comes to mental health issues.
But well, it's because it's not something that we're used to. It's not something that has been accepted in our community because there's a stigma attached to it.
Yes.
That there's something wrong with you if you go to seek mental health counseling. When it's actually something right with you if you're seeking mental health counseling because you're trying to make yourself better.
Better.
Because when you've had a trauma, such as having, when there's gun violence close to you, whether you are a victim of it or whether you've seen it or whether you've been close to it or somebody in your family or a friend has been a victim of it, that's going to affect you deeply.
Yes.
And that's a wound that, though it may not be physical, needs to be healed. And, there's a part in the documentary that I think is really, really important where they're talking to a bunch of young men and they're asking them, do you cry?
I remember that.
And they're saying that if you don't cry, you're not letting it out.
So did you seek mental health services, beloved?
So yes, so one of the blessings is that Living Redemption Community Development Corporation, they got a program with FFT, which is therapists. And one of the things that we always say, we got to lead by example. We do a lot of talking. We love to talk about the hurt, the pain, and all that, but we don't really go about showing the example what the solution look like. So one of the things that's real for us at the FFT is that we get a chance to sit with a therapist and really talk about, the trauma, the secondary trauma, the mental health and everything. Because what happened is, I believe everybody need a therapist, right? I think everybody needs somebody that's professionally knowing how to speak to you and really deal with you at that time. Because even when I speak to my mother and father, there's no putting them down, but they don't have the answers to everything, right?
Correct.
And then the other part is some of their upbringing was different. Because, back in the days, it used to be a youth should be seen and not heard.
Yes.
Right?
I was told
and
that,
then
yes.
if you live in a certain community, whatever happens in the house, stay in the house. But guess what? Some of my trauma's in the house.
Gotcha.
Right? Some of my violence performance, some of my real violence start in the house. A lot of times we don't understand how we're killing people with action and words.
Yes.
Right? So the youth is really getting the words and they're getting the action to know how to apply the nonsense out in the street. So being able to work with the Queen and have that opportunity to be able to focus on trauma in the way that we're doing now, because we told people a lot of times one of the biggest problems is we are lip professors, right? We got a lot of things to talk about, but we don't have the answers. Credible message, we got the answers. We just need to be allowed to be able to be everywhere. Because the reason why is because what we learn is not everybody got good vocabulary.
Right.
No, not everybody know how to express themselves.
Yes.
So credible messengers, we learn how to break things down to the simplest form to be able to get the healing started.
That's why I thought this was a great creative process. By doing this documentary, talking about this serious issue, you were able, through talking on air, not just the solutions, but just how it felt to communicate with some of these young people and how you were dealing with some of the sad outcomes for many of them, because many of them did die or they were injured. And I just thought that was great, that you took this and you made this a very creative process. I was hoping that you were familiar with the Doc NYC Festival, which deals with documentaries, because I think this should be one included in that film festival. It's a great film festival in New York because this is very credible. You don't feel like you're putting people down. It feels like you're trying to lift them up.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yes.
We're trying to make sure that people have access and have tools to make a difference in their own lives, and also show other people that this is where that they can direct funding to send it to places that are actually going to make a difference when it comes to gun violence and to change the traumas in people's lives. Because, funding cops alone is not going to do it.
It's not.
And to fund credible messengers and violence interrupters, and these are where the solutions actually are. And this is what's going to make a difference. And if the money goes to these places, we're going to see a sea change in the violence that is in our communities.
Yes.
I mean, because we all know the gun violence that's in our communities is not by somebody having a legal weapon that they've bought at some chain store, right? It's illegal weapons. It's ghost guns.
Yes.
It's those guns that are bought in the back of a bodega.
Yes.
Bought out of the trunk of a car. And legislation isn't going to do it.
No.
It can't be legislated away.
But I like the fact that you're saying love
Yeah.
is going to change it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, before we end, because we've already come close to the end of our program, tell us that you can see the full documentary on the Amsterdam News website, correct?
Yes. amsterdamnews.com/beyond. And then you will find the documentary there.
And I just want to give a shout out to your director, Andre Lampinson,
Yes.
who did a fabulous job in
Yes.
capturing all the conversations that was going on. And I think he's very credible because he's done several documentaries that dealt with urban life
Yes.
throughout New York City and other places. So you can see the full documentary on your website. I highly recommend it. Have you ever thought about doing any public viewings of the film, like in schools or churches?
We are talking about it, and it will happen.
Yes, it will happen. She's not done with it. Like she said, Amsterdam is definitely a place you want to talk about a lot of things because Amsterdam been with me since 2010. Every situation I ever really had, I got a chance to speak to Amsterdam, and they got a chance to really put my information out there. So for them to be doing what they're doing right now, it just shows you how real they are.
Yes.
As people, how people can care. Because we believe in love, and we know that love is independent, right? So love is the thing that we want to put in the community. And we love each other, right? Because, it didn't have to be shown in the way that it's being shown. But it's reaching the families, and it's reaching the hearts of people and minds. And some people that wouldn't have saw it is now able to see it. And we got to give thanks to Amsterdam for that.
Well, thank you so much, Elinor, for coming because I know you're a very busy person.
Thank you for having me.
But
and this is the first of many.
Okay, I hope so because this is such an important subject. And so we need to have the community come together. But I think it was the style in which you did it. You made it personable, approachable, and people could see it even in the privacy of their homes if they felt intimidated. But the message got out, and it felt real, and it felt very, very true. Do you have any final words, beloved?
So I say this, one of the greatest things is Amsterdam identifying this, and then also we're homed in a church called Soul Saving Station for Every Nation.
Yes, on 8th Avenue, right?
Yes, and we're fathers. One of the meetings we was at, somebody was like, it's not no fathers really doing nothing. Well, basically everybody on my team is a father, and everybody on my team is a parent, a mother. So the blessing part I would say is if you want to find us, we're located on 124th and 8th Avenue. We work out of Soul Saving Station. Our number is 24/7. And we work with youth that's either going to do shooting or get shot. And we work with the whole family. If you ever come to our program on 125th, it's the FEC, Family Enrichment Center.
Okay.
And then we got the youth program, which is the YSC, where we given the opportunity to work with the youth and from the ages 12 to 19.
Okay.
So please, my name is Beloved. Amsterdam News is definitely a place you want to be able to really talk, and they really listen to you. Please just take advantage of that. And thank you for having us here.
Thank you so very, very much for both of you coming on. So we wish to thank you again, and I hope to see you both soon.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right.